welcome to our second guest expert today, Darren Mort, who is a family law barrister. Darren, I know you've got over 3 decades worth of experience. You're also an accredited mediator, arbitrator, and you've seen a lot of the impact of separation in families. What people may not know is that Darren also does a lot of advocacy work for children, and you've produced 2 films on this very topic around the impact on children, one called Tommy, the other one called Millie, which is touring around Australia and New Zealand at the moment. I highly recommend that outside of this, everyone has a look at those films because they're quite thought-provoking. And I just want to acknowledge, Darren, that you have been appearing this morning. You are in that much demand. You have literally just walked out of appearing in court to join us on this important topic. So thank you, mate.
Yeah, not at all. Thanks for having me.
Darren, we might just jump straight into
Sure.
it. This conference is addressing this topic around parental alienation. Can I ask you, what is parental alienation?
Oh gosh. You ask every second person, they come up with a different explanation. But look, I'd say in a nutshell, parental alienation's a term that describes a parent's manipulation of a child to reject, fear, or avoid the other parent, if you like. It can be conscious or unconscious behaviours that sort of disrupt the child's natural attachment to both parents because children are biologically prone. And as we know, it can cause severe psychological harm, including mental health issues, attachment disorders, difficulty forming healthy relationships later on, that sort of thing. It's fairly nasty, but it is a vexed term in the family court jurisdiction.
Darren, if I can go there, why is it vexed in the court? Is it that it is misused? It's not defined enough? Why is that vexed in the court?
Yeah, I think it's misused. I think we rarely see pure forms of it. I've only seen a few in my many years in the family court. I think there's a lot of social science in the area, and there's a lot of conflict in terms of various psychologists' views on it. And that's where the difficulty lies. There was some mooting of a parental alienation syndrome at one stage, which has sort of lost momentum. I think from my point of view, so I'll give you an example. I had a case 2 years ago, year and a half ago. I was acting for this wonderful father. He was Teflon in the witness box. You couldn't say anything bad against this bloke. He had 2 kids, 2 boys, 9 years of age with autism. The mother was terrible. She would validate the boys' concerns, but they were really projecting her fears, and my bloke would turn up to contact and the boys would call him all sorts of disgusting names in the presence of his mother as well. When he did get them for time, one of the boys tried to stab him to death and would say to him, "Look, I need to kill you, Dad, to give Mum peace, to make Mum feel better." So it was a terrible case. We had police, we had ambulances, the whole thing. Anyhow, I read the case, and although it seemed to be a case of parental alienation, and it definitely had very strong elements of parental alienation, I ran the case on the basis that the mother had enmeshed the child in her world, had aligned the children with her because she was still sleeping with them, and she was alienating them. So I said to the judge, I don't want you to think this is pure parental alienation. It's a lot more complex than that. And so when I use the word parental alienation, it's to use the verb to alienate rather than an actual, concept. And if you look at Gardner's studies back in 1984, when he first came up with this type of terminology, where he said, "Oh, look, the best way is to just take the children away from one parent and put them with the other parent for 3 months and totally quarantine the children. That'll fix them up." It was fairly rudimentary because these days the social science is a lot more complex. They look at both sides of the equation, they unpack it. And usually when you do unpack it, you find exactly how I ran that case, that it's usually dollops of this and dollops of that.
That's interesting. So, Darren, when you get to see the complexities of these cases, I know you act as a mediator, trying to keep people out of court. You have to advocate and represent in court as a barrister. Professionally, what's your position on parental alienation and why, given what you've seen in your career?
Look, sadly, I don't think a lot of people have much choice than to go to court when children are being alienated. I would say this, that there is a window of opportunity. And if anyone has some hesitation in terms of whether I go to court or not, and if there's been a history, a solid history of the children or the child rejecting the other parent, and it seems on balance that it's due to the behaviours, conscious or unconscious, of the other parent, um, unless you've got some really good psychologists on board, and I know a few of them, um, I think you need to get to court to unpack it all. And although that comes with a cost and it doesn't always get you the result, waiting to issue proceedings might be problematic and adverse to the child or children because the longer the child stays in that situation, the worse it's going to be for the child and the harder it's going to be to remove the child. So once children get to 10, 11, 12, it becomes very hard. There's a window of opportunity. So it's every case. What I'd say, JD, is every case is unique. Every case is very unique, and you have to make the assessment as early on as you can. Because I think the cases I've seen, I definitely think there's some personality traits at play, if not psychiatric conditions. Because what parent in their right mind wants to prevent their children where there's no risk and where that parent can provide a safe and stress-free environment? Where, where is it in the parent manual to prevent your child having a relationship with that other parent? It just doesn't make sense. So it says to me there's some significant issues at hand.
And that's interesting, Darren, because our previous speaker also mentioned about the complexities. It's clear that you see that when you're working with families and cases. And what I'm hearing is don't hesitate to move forward and get it unpacked so you can get the right support around the whole family. Is that what you're
Exactly.
saying? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
On that point, one of my first things I say to clients, how are you self-caring? What are you doing for yourself going through this very traumatic process, particularly if you're not seeing your child? So really important because that gives you focus, capacity to focus. Because if you're in a fog, being traumatized by all this, how are you going to make rational decisions?
So, Darren, do you see that in clients where they are in that fog of dealing with the processes and the issue in parallel? Is that what
All
you're
the time. They enter the process traumatized. They remain in the process traumatized, where they continue to pick the traumatic scab. By the time they get to a final hearing, the scab's usually bleeding, and it bleeds more at the end of the proceedings when the lawyers ask for their invoices to be paid. And it's not good. So you need really good self-care. And not someone who's just going to say, oh, yeah, you're right, you're right. You need someone who's going to reality test you as well. And I always say to people, do your research. Just don't go to a psychologist that's, one out of the yellow pages. Make sure you go to a psychologist that at least is aware of the dynamics that play out in our very unique, weird place called the family court.
Yeah. And Darren, do you get to see the impact on the children? You said there about the trauma of the parents going through the process, but do you get to see how that translates down to the children themselves?
Yeah, I don't see it one-on-one because I don't get to see the kids. I read about it and I get told about it by my client. And that's part of my beef at the moment because we pay lip service to the fact, oh, give kids a voice. But whose voice is it really? And how is that voice distilled in terms of it's really hearsay? People are saying what they think the children are saying, or I don't get that part of it. It's part of the reason why I started producing films to give people an idea of what trauma looks like.
And that's the two films I mentioned earlier, Tommy and Millie. And I think
Yeah.
Millie is currently touring around Australia. I've seen one part of Millie where it almost disturbed me, the perspective of the child hearing the parents still in high conflict, but that emotion changed my thinking as I was watching that clip.
Oh, great. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's part of the impact because I don't think, look, to be fair to parents, they're going through hell. And it's the old thing, the plane's crashing, grab your oxygen mask before you put the kids on. And it's very traumatic. So I don't blame parents sometimes for giving themselves that attention because their whole world is crashing. Where I do blame parents is where they're so lacking in priority that in order to get what they want, they use the children to do so.
Right.
That's where I'm blaming.
And what we're talking about now is prompting a lot of questions from the audience. So if we can encourage the audience to keep your questions coming through, I'll put those to Darren in a moment. Darren, let's take a bigger picture perspective for a second. What you've been in family law or in your profession for 3.5 decades. With that experience, what needs to change? What changes are needed in this space so that we can get past that trauma? We can get to those results that you speak about where there's support around the family to make this work.
Well, one, we need um, expert professionals, whether they're judges or whatever. We need people with experience on the court bench, not, and some of the judges we've got are fantastic, but some of them have got no family law experience or limited. Um, so it's funny that the legislation asks for an objective determination based on the best interests of children, but in order to get that judgment, we employ the subjective view of a judge who sometimes hasn't got the experience in the first place. So that concerns me. If I'm going to be bold and throw it out there, I'd say get rid of the family court in its current state. Employ really good mediators, attaching to professional psychologists, where there's resources thrown into that to try and get parents to come to a conclusion or a co-parenting arrangement that's in the best interests of their children. I think the family court should be set up as a tribunal with a judge and a social scientist sitting on the bench, and that should be informed by a family consultant who is attached to that family and reports to the judge and the social scientist. That'd be my view of an ideal system, and I think that the the cases that that sort of tribunal will be reserved to would be situations where there's extreme or some family violence on such a level that there's no moving forward with the family via a mediation process, or where there's mental health issues that prevent the mediation process from moving forward. There's probably others, but that would be my ideal view of the family court because the family court started out in 1975. Lionel Murphy, God rest his soul, who said and set it up, and the judges were there to make a positive inquiry into the best interests of children. Now, sadly, in my view only, which I'm allowed to have, it's more like a ticker box. There are so many people, the court's really low on resources, it takes forever to get on, it costs a fortune to litigate, and at the end of the day, there's no guarantee what outcome you'll get because there's so many judges with different views. So once you go into court, you lose control. And as a parent of kids myself, I can't imagine losing control over an outcome to benefit my children, who I know better than anyone else on this planet apart from my wife. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that really brings it home. And I acknowledge that we've got both parents and professionals live in the audience right now, and I think most of the professionals are probably parents as well. You just took it from the legal field back to the personal of I can't imagine what that's like for these parents going through, but let alone the children. Yeah,
terrible.
yeah. Well, and thank you for your views. We've interesting. We've had others that have been on the bar that have spoken similarly about almost a revamp of the Family Law Act. We know it's been in for 50 odd years. So appreciate your insights there into possibilities of what could be done. Darren, can I shift this more towards the audience? We've got professionals, we've got parents
Sure.
going through this that are live online and watching the recording afterwards. What can they do now if they find themselves in one of these situations? High conflict, there is elements of parental alienation, or in some cases, we know some have not seen their children for years. What would you say to them? What could they start doing now?
Okay. Well, I would say number one, instruct a lawyer. Number two, get it into court as quickly as possible. Number three, ensure that you have a psychologist on board who is used to or is significantly experienced enough to unpack these extremely difficult cases, to look into the foibles of both parents, to a psychologist who's not going to simply adopt a null hypothesis and simply blame one parent, because often it takes two to tango. It's that case I told you about before is a rarity where you've got a father who's just Teflon, Mr. Teflon. It's rare because usually there'll be faults on both sides. However, the responsibility rests with the primary parent, the primary caregiver, and that in that case, the primary caregiver was validating the children's concerns, which is fine, but there is a strict responsibility to facilitate a relationship with the other parent to ensure that child has a meaningful relationship whereby that child can grow up to be emotionally, psychologically, and physically sound. And if that parent can't facilitate that relationship for whatever reason, then the other parent should have the custody of those children. And that's not easy. I can tell you in that case what the judge did. School holidays were coming up, and we had to adjourn. And I said, "Hey, what about if we use the school holidays and we have the boys, and Mum can not have any contact with them?" And we did that, and it was a very courageous, very experienced judge who made that order,
Wow.
and he did. And those boys, apart from the first couple of days where it was difficult, those boys just flipped. They were just not the same boys as what they were beforehand, um, because they had that attachment to their dad, you know. And what I see too, JD, is, look, I get it why people don't want to get involved in the court because it costs so much money and it's so much trauma and so much uncertainty. But you owe it to your kids because the research shows a lot of these. Look, two things. One myth is the children will come back to me. Absolute bullshit, excuse the French. They won't come back to you. The odds are they probably won't. If they do, what we do know from the research is they'll be pointing the index finger at you and saying, Dad, why did you try harder? Why did you give up?
Wow.
So, so you have a responsibility as a parent to meet your obligations, and one of those obligations is to make sure you do everything possible you can for that child, because even if they do come back and point the index finger, you can say, listen here, little Bobby, I did do everything. It cost me a lot of money. I tried, and that's what I did. So easy for me to sit here and say that, but I see it time again, and it's frustrating. I think I helped you out the other week with a dads in distress meeting.
That's right. Yeah.
I walked away from that feeling very sad and a bit dejected in the sense that there were so many fathers there that hadn't seen their kids for some period of time. Now, there may be reasons, we didn't get the full stories, so there may be reasons for that. But those fathers that were good dads and could provide the children with safety in a stress-free environment and um, capitalize on the relationship and the attachment they have with those children, for those dads to sit back and say, I haven't seen my kids for a year and I've done nothing about it, there's no excuse for that, JD.
Yeah.
Because you can represent yourself in the court if need be. There's legal community centres that can help you fill out documents. There's no excuse for that. And that's why it gets back to what I said before. What self-care have you got? Because once you've got that self-care, you can make clearer decisions.
That's a really interesting observation, and we've got well, I can see in the audience right now we've got some of the mums and dads experiencing the same thing, and I can see eyes rolling through some of the comments about actually maybe I need to get into action. What's also interesting, Darren, is this next one of the comments that just came through. It's interesting to see that Darren and Pete, who was the previous speaker, saying the same things in two different sessions. It shows that all the professionals are seeing the same issues. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, I didn't hear Pete's. So,
yeah,
but that's heartening to see that he was saying the same things. Because when you're at the coalface every day experiencing this, there is a commonality. And I always get back to the fact that, yeah, look, humans can be complex in some regards, but behavior behavior is often rudimentary, and humans, the way they behave, is not very dissimilar to each other at the end of the day. We've all got there's a continuum, and we've all got that capacity to float fluidly through that continuum in terms of our behaviors. So we might say certain things at the end of the day, but I always, in my senses, actions speak louder than words 200% of the time. So watching people do or what they don't do, that's what's important.
and that talks to your comment before about in the future speaking with your adult child and saying, yes, I did make the effort.
Mm.
I did put the effort in. There's another comment that's just come through, Darren, live, saying it's interesting to hear your thoughts around the structure of the family court, because from the outside it can seem fair, but really it's flawed in many aspects. So it's very interesting to hear you as you know, you're on the bar, you've just been in court this morning, sharing views that are shared by others on the bar that we need to revisit. So the audience is seeing that as well.
Yeah, and the thing is with the family court, it's covered by a veil because there's provisions in the Act which provide for confidentiality. And so cases are not reported in the traditional sense. And there's certain information in the court that doesn't get disclosed to the public, which if the public knew what goes on sometimes, they would be in shock, you know? So I'll just give you an example. It's not a parenting matter. I'm in court at the moment, right? I won't disclose cases, names or anything, but we're in court. The one of the parties is asking for urgent spousal maintenance. I'm acting for the other party, and I said, well, how can that party ask for urgent spousal maintenance when that party hasn't come to court with clean hands? They've given us hardly any disclosure. They work cash in hand. We say that that party's been siphoning off money during the marriage from our business account, and lo and behold, we get a judicial officer who may not be on top of things and says, "Oh well, let's just make an order and give the party some urgent spousal maintenance till we come back to court." You know, so you can't predict. If you're looking at this strictly, there shouldn't be an order for spousal maintenance, but you go into court, you lose control. A judicial officer is not on top of the materials, and it's you know whatever. And it's frustrating. It's very frustrating at times.
Can hear
Um,
that in your voice today. Yeah,
yeah,
because
but
you
you
care. Yeah.
you live with it. Yeah, well, that's the problem. I care too much. My wife says, "Why don't you retire?" And I say, "Well, look, I still go to court. I still get white line fever. I still care too much, and that's why I still do what I do." On that note, though, as you know, I think JD, Tommy, our film, which is in the American state court system, judges order, parents watch it. We've had some research done on the impact of that film and the parenting program it's attached to, and the evidence-based research is it's changed the way people behave, parents behave towards each other, not necessarily how they feel about each other. I don't care if parents hate each other till the cows come home. That doesn't matter. But how they behave in front of their children and how they act responsibly as parents, I do care. And it's good to see that programs whereby we're thinking outside the square, not necessarily using the court system, is actually changing the way people are behaving, which is important because, my best defense as a barrister is that I work on the basis that every parent loves their kids and wants what's best for them. So if you want what's best for your children, make a decision that you're not exactly on board with, but it's going to prioritize the needs and make for a better co-parenting relationship. Um, it's going to be a win-win for that kid, you know.
You've just given a whole new dimension to, in the child's best interest or the children's best interest. What you're talking now is practical. Do what you need to keep that impact away from the children and make a bad situation as best as you can for their sake. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and look, I know you think the same, and I respect the work that you do, which is amazing. But it always takes one parent, at least, to step up to the parental plate and maybe suck it up for the sake of the child. So I was at court a couple of years ago. My client wanted 7-7 with the kids. Why not? He was a good dad. She's a bit of a control freak mum, she was. They couldn't agree. We didn't know what would happen in court. It was a new judge, and we didn't know, he could have come out with a 5-9 either way. And my bloke said, listen, Darren, I'm going to have 6 nights and a bit of the next day with this kid. Um, I'm prepared to go 6-8 if we can settle this matter because it gives me certainty. It sends a message to her that I'm prepared to compromise. And more importantly, both of us can go home to our kid and say, Mum and Dad have agreed on orders. We didn't need to go to a judge. Now,
Uh,
that to me speaks volumes about the capacity for that father. What an amazing dad, you know?
yeah. But Darren, the comments are flying in thick and fast. I think
Ah,
we've opened up. There's a couple appreciating that you're just speaking so plainly and bluntly, and it's relatable. Because
oh, good.
someone's actually said, I find it hard to understand lawyers, but now I can actually understand someone who works in the
Oh,
field.
that's
So,
nice.
um, the next question, Darren, is can you comment on how you typically present a case of parental alienation, or do you in fact even call it that? And to what extent do you find it can be addressed, whether it's rarely or reliably to actually get a result?
Okay, so I work with psychologists that I trust. If a client comes to me and wants a psychologist, I see if I can persuade the other client, the other side to agree to that psychologist. That's your first port of call to work out a diagnosis, if you like, not in strict terms, but maybe some matters addressed what cause problems. Um, so in terms of the breakdown of the relationships, etc. So I get a good social scientist on board, and then we start to think outside the square and work out how we can move things forward, providing as much safety as we can for the parents and the child. I also, if need be, and the child hasn't suffered any systems abuse by way of being exposed to lots of psychologists, I then get a psychologist on board for the child so that that gives them a safety net. And that psychologist would liaise with the family, can I call it the family consultant that performs the initial diagnosis, if you like. So therefore, we have a real strong safety net of social science to work out the issues. Because as lawyers, what the hell do we know? We know nothing about social science in its complexities. And what the hell do judges know without that really important information so they can base their decisions soundly and competently? So that's the first step. And moving forward that process and working out mechanisms or ways that we can improve the current situation. Um, Usually, um, I wouldn't be putting forward affidavit material, declaring, showing my hand and saying, "Oh, this is a parental alienation case," or whatever. I would be a lot more broad, and attack it that way so that you have potential issues that can be addressed one by one. So there may be alienation. There may be that may be caused by a really strong enmeshment that the mother or the father has with the child. There may be things that that parent's doing to align the child that causes that alienating behaviour. So I'd say don't put all your balls in one basket or your eggs in one basket, as they say. Don't do that. Be broader, be smarter, and make sure that if your kids are getting treatment, that you as a parent get to meet that treater, that the other parent doesn't have the capacity to use that treater as a weapon against you. So, which you often see, had a mother the other week that wouldn't tell us what psychologist she was taking the kid to, and then the poor psychologist writes a report in the subpoenaed notes about the mother told me the father did this and did that and did this. But the problem is you get them in the witness box and you say, well, did you speak to the father? Do you know as a fact that what the wife told you is the true story? You listen to the kids. Did you ever have any time with the father to explain how the kids are in his house? I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to be done. So you've got joint parental responsibility without any orders of the court. So exercise it and make sure that one parent isn't abusing the children by arming their weaponry with one particular expert that's going to provide pure allegiance to them and create issues for you along the way. Yep.
Wow. Yep. Okay. Well, you mentioned also about self-care. We've had about two or three people put in a similar question asking, what would you recommend as self-care for someone who's going through the family court who is experiencing all these elements that we're speaking about?
Yeah. Okay. Friends are a good one. A lot of men, women are really good at this. Take my hat off to women. And I think it just it dates back to, you know, caveman times where women were around the fireplace cooking up the meat. The men were out as hunters doing their thing, killing off lions and bringing them back to the women folk around the cooking rocks, whatever. And I don't say that in any misogynistic tone. I'm just saying that's what used to happen. And through the ages, we've seen women are very good communicators and they're very good. And of course, times have changed now, thank goodness, having two daughters myself, where women have got careers and they're out there in their community, which is great. It's more normalized, but there's still women are fantastic communicators and they do it very well. Men are not so good at that. And men try to shoulder the responsibility themselves. So I'd say if you're a bloke, get some mates. You might have one or two in your collection that you trust that you can talk to. But otherwise, go to your local GP and get a referral to a psychologist that deals in family law matters, where you can go and have a very frank conversation with them how what's happening and how it's impacting you. So I think that's good too. The other thing is exercise. You know, what happens? You look around and your mates, all of a sudden they've got bellies. They're looking like they're 70 years of age instead of 40. Their diet's crap. They drink too much alcohol. They smoke too much. Get healthy. Go and have a makeover. Have a lot of these. You see on Instagram all these people who have these, 10-week transformations or whatever. Go and get healthy. Go and get healthy. You do a fantastic amount of work across the board, JD, but in particular in relation to men, you have this, you set up these meetings where blokes can talk freely about their issues and learn from each other, but also relieve tension and stress. I look at it like a beach ball, right? You get a beach ball blown up, you push it underwater, and if you let go, it bounces up and hits the ceiling, right? If you're promoting self-care with you and yourself, when you're pressing down on the beach ball, it's not going to pop out the water so high. It's not going to be like releasing a valve to that extent. So it's really, really important. And for God's sake, if you're depressed, anxious, you can't get to sleep, don't be a superhero. Go to your doctors, get some antidepressants. It's like a plaster cast on your arm. It'll help you through what you've got to get through at the time. It's not shameful at this day and age. There's judges, barristers, doctors, you name it, people, teachers, all on antidepressant medication to assist them in one way or another. If you need medication, get advice from your doctor and go on medication to help you through your trauma. I'm not saying everyone should do that. It's a unique situation. But they're the sort of things I'm thinking of. For me, when I was stressed many years ago, I took up yoga. And yoga was great because it got you breathing again, got you more calm, took away that trauma, that fog. Anyhow, blah, blah.
All right. So now the questions are rolling in, focus back on the child. Does the age of the child affect the outcome of these custody disputes? And how do you go about getting that undiluted input or voice of the child?
Yeah, right. Well, yes, it does. You've got a kid that's hitting 13, 14, 15. The court's eyes start to blur over because it's very hard to control a teenage child. Got one recently where the boy keeps running back to the dad. And no matter how much we try, how much intervention there is, he says, the kid goes, you can all get stuffed. I'm living with dad. Okay. So what do? You can't do anything. So people will say, when do the child's wishes count for something? Well, they always count for something, usually above the age of 5. Um, and the court determines what weight to give them, how mature that child is, and what level of insight that child is. They do the best they can with that. And usually the report writers, the family consultants, give the court an idea of how much weight they should put on the child's wishes. Everything is unique. Every family dynamic is different, and every child, of course, is different and unique, and has their own wishes based on whatever. The way the court looks at it is, are those wishes being infected in any way by the views of the other parent? And as I said, usually, you know, 7, 8, 9, you start to get momentum. As the child gets older, those wishes become more important. Yeah, but they're not the be all and end all. Sometimes kids make wishes and they're not acceded to by the court for whatever reason. But you know what? The research, if any of your listeners go onto the Australian Institute for Family Studies website, AIFS, there's some great papers written by Rachel Carson, and she's written some papers recently on the voice of a child. I think one of the papers I'm thinking of was 2018. But she said kids don't give a stuff if they don't get what they want. They just want to be heard. They want their wishes to be considered by their parents, by family consultants, and by the court. As long as they're heard, they're satisfied, you know?
Darren, live, we've just had an adult child that's been through this, has just commented and said, thank you, because that's all I wanted. It's just
Yeah,
saying, I wanted to be heard, and everyone talked at me. No one actually heard me.
exactly. Gone are the days where our granny used to say children should be seen and not heard. I'm afraid that doesn't play out in this day and age. Children should be seen and heard.
There you go.
Yeah.
Darren, I know you represent clients around the country. We've got a specific question because our team's in Darwin in the Northern Territory. They're
Oh,
asking,
yeah.
do you know any experts up in the Northern Territory that
Um,
specialise in this field?
Look, so I appear in Darwin, um, and I've got a couple of solicitors up there that brief me. I've run 2 recent relocation cases, one for a dad who wanted his kids to stay in Darwin and not move to Adelaide. He was successful, which was lovely for him, a really top dad. The other case I acted for a woman who wanted to change and get work in Perth. She wanted to take her kids with her, and we were successful on that application, so she was able to move for different reasons. The answer to your question, sorry, JD, I'm going all over the place, is that no, I don't. However, in the last relocation case where I was acting for dad, the family consultant came from Sydney. She's well known to me. She's a very good operator. And so in this day and age of what we're doing now on Zoom and Microsoft Teams, these psychologists can sometimes they come to Darwin to do a face-to-face with the clients because they have a number of clients. They can kill 2 birds with one stone, or alternatively, they do it on Zoom. So you can always get recommendations from that, and I'm always happy to give people recommendations. I know good psychologists in Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane, actually. I don't think there's a whole wad of them in Darwin, to be quite frank, without saying anything bad about anyone. I don't think there's the court has some in-house, but again, sometimes pay peanuts get monkeys. That's a generalization on my part. If you want some absolute peace of mind, look to the people who practice in the field who are the real experts.
Yeah, yeah. And well, that's prompted the next question, Darren. Are you aware of any best practice in legal management of parental alienation anywhere, here or internationally?
Yep, I do. The answer to that is I do. I know solicitors who are expert enough to deal in this area. I know experts overseas. I'm a member of the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts in America, where I present quite regularly. Last year I was in Boston, and there is a significant pool of experts over there. In America, for example, I'm going to Cambridge in 2 weeks, and I know people over in England as well that are excellent. Marilyn Freeman, have a look at her stuff on alienation and parents that relocate children unilaterally to another continent. She does some fantastic work through University of Westminster. It's fascinating stuff. how children cope, and the pitfalls. And I'm sure if parents understood that when they do it, they wouldn't act so harshly. So, in answer to your question, yes, JD.
And you were speaking just the other day about the Tough Talk series with Vincent around looking at resist refuse dynamics and things like
Yeah.
that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I do that. We do that nationally. Vince and I, Vince Papaleo. I'm not just saying it because I'm involved in it, but I sit there fascinated sometimes too, because like many of your listeners, I'm not a qualified psychologist. So Vince has some fantastic information to provide. We deal with parental alienation. We deal with refuse resist dynamics. We deal with personality disorders. We deal with the voice of the child. And we show Millie, we talk about child trauma. We show Tommy, we unpack all sorts of things in relation to Tommy, because that Tommy is quite a impactful film. We deal with discussion papers in relation to that. If people Google Tough Tell series, they'll see the information on that, and they can, drop us a line. Happy to go, and we'll maybe looking at coming over to New Zealand to run a series. So if anyone's got any interest over there, let us know.
Well, we're heading there with the Anne's Pack series, so maybe we should talk together. I know you're keen on
Yeah,
collaboration, so
fantastic. Like
um,
collaboration.
we are getting live questions off everything you're saying. Someone's asked what personalities or personality disorders, in your experience, block the mediation process from being a constructive process. Can you give any behavioural examples?
Look, narcissism would have to be top of the pops. Um, and again, that's on a continuum from people that are splashing down the shallow end of the pool to people who are treading water down the deep end of the pool. But narcissism is often there. Antisocial personality disorder is usually another one we commonly see. Borderline personality disorder, not so common. Of all the disorders, that's probably the worst. It's a shocking thing to have, but some people have it, and that really prevents moving forward with negotiations a lot of the time because it's untreatable. In most people, you'll find psychologists will tell you and psychiatrists that it's not treatable. Narcissism and antisocial, that can have some positive effects in terms of some treatment. Again, I'm not a psychologist. You're better off asking psychology these questions, but from the reports I received, definitely. The other thing too is if you've got a hint that someone is suffering from these disorders, you can get what's called risk assessments done, or you can get psychological assessments done. There's a body of people, psychologists that perform those tests, and they're very useful as an adjunct to a family report because it starts to make sense why people aren't doing things they should be doing, and what are the dynamics driving a matter.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
A couple more questions that are streaming in as we get close to wrapping this up. We've got a parent asking or saying it's really interesting that you say as a parent, don't give up. My kids are 16 and 14, and we're seeking a recovery order and additional time. What else can I do? What do I do next?
Yeah, a recovery order at those ages is going to be a fairly, I don't know the exact facts of that case, but it's going to be fairly useless. I would have thought a court's going to be fairly loath to bring the kids back. What I would think is some really focused family therapy might assist. Um, that's all that a parent can do in that situation at 14 and 16, having some family therapy and seeing what direction that takes. If it takes a direction where there's no point of return, well, that parent's done everything they can, albeit very sad. Um, it's all really you can do, and maybe send cards, gifts, and letters at every juncture, letting the kids know that mum or dad still loves you, and the door's open, and anytime you want to return, because you can bet your bottom dollar that there'll be some shitty times in that kid's life, or some joyous times such as childbirth or celebrations where they wish, or it'll cross their mind. It'd be interesting to see mum and dad here at this event or whatever. So easy for me to say don't lose hope, but I will say don't lose hope. But I think you just need to show that kid that what's going on in their own mind doesn't meet with reality, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Darren, one last question and then one last comment. And I know we're on borrowed time. I know you literally stepped out.
Yeah, I've got to go back into court.
we
Yeah.
got to get you back in. The last question. I love that you're using film as a medium to raise awareness about tough topics like parental alienation. Can you see it generating conversation and awareness that creates change?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Does anyone, any of your listeners, ever see that film Spotlight, which was all those liturgical figures, priests and that abusing mostly little boys? That film created such a wave across the world in terms of change and still ongoing investigations in relation to that particular child abuse. So I've got great faith, and particularly on the back of what Tommy's done, I've got great faith that these films can actually be impactful. Because if I said to any of your viewers out there, and you've heard me say this before, JD, but name your top three movies. There'd be three light bulbs automatically coming above your head. And if I was then said to you, okay, so Shawshank Redemption, which is my favourite film, is your favourite film. What was one of the two main impactful moments in that film? And your brain would go straight to that scene. And when you see that scene in your mind, it would trigger you emotionally. And that's what these films do for people. I've seen grown men sobbing, including myself, when I see Tommy. I still do. I've seen it hundreds of times and I still sob through it.
Yeah.
Millie does the same thing in a bit more of a sneaky pattern, but it still does the same thing. So what that does is it reminds people, whether you're the whatever parent you are, it reminds them. And visual images are a very important consideration, because otherwise, what are we? We're talking heads, like people listening to me now. Some of your listeners will be going, "Oh, yeah, I've heard all that before," and that's fair comment. That's fair comment. But if I actually sat down with them and showed them Millie, they might think, "Ah, I actually get what you're saying,
Yeah.
and I actually get what I'm doing to this little kid." And I'm actually thinking that little kid could do without that trauma. That's my responsibility. I chose to bring this child in the world, and I therefore need to give this child his or her best possible chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Darren, so we can get you back into court because you're there live at the moment. The final comment is thank you for speaking so plainly and bluntly. As one professional to another, it's rare, but it helps us on the periphery of this issue to better understand.
Oh, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
So I'm going to second that that comment and say thank you. I know that you juggled literally appearing for a family in court today to come in on this important topic, and I know it means a lot to you and that you care. So thank you so much for your views and for answering questions on the spot
Yeah.
for us
Thanks,
today.
JD. Yes.
So for anyone that we have spoken of Tommy and Millie, if you're interested, we'll make sure that our helpline has details to point people to your website to see those. For anyone watching this, if you do need an ear right now after some of what we've discussed, please give us a call on 1300 853 437. You'll get a peer, a mum or a dad just like you that can help walk you through this, and we can connect you with some of these experts that Darren and others have been speaking of. I'd also say keep watching andspac.org, and to watch some of these replays back of these interviews, go to the Parents Beyond Breakup YouTube channel. We'll have a playlist for every speaker. We'll have one here for Darren and one for Pete, who spoke earlier. Darren, thank you so much for caring, and thank you for your time today and sneaking us in between hearings. We really appreciate what you're doing, and we appreciate you. So thank you.
Not at all. Thank you for having me, and good luck, everyone who's listening. See ya. Ciao.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you again. Our next ANZPAC event is coming live from Brisbane at the end of July. Then we're heading off to Adelaide and Auckland. So we look forward to seeing you at our next ANZPAC event. Thank you.